When asked about the Beatles, the first thing that comes to your mind is music, right? It would interest you to know that apart from music, the Beatles also got involved in making movies. Recently, movies about the Fab Four have also been created. These are movies based on their personal life, career, and the likes. Some of the movies were directly made by the Beatles themselves, and some are merely about the Beatles. Some, even, are simply inspired by the band and their musical output. Regardless, they're all related to the iconic Fab Four and were well received by their fans. If you are a fan of the Beatles, how would you rank their movies from worst to amazing? We'll dive right into this detail, but before we do so, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more exclusive content on the Beatles. In 1962, four talented lads from Liverpool came together to form the most revolutionary rock group that ever performed. John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison, and Ringo Starr became icons over their immensely decorated career, producing over 200 songs that have been enjoyed over multiple generations. Their impact in the music industry is surreal and has made them notable legends. The Beatles dominated the music industry in a way no other band ever has, and in no time, they were overly popular. It did not take long for their cultural dominance to extend to the world of film as well, beginning with the 1964 black and white comedy A Hard Day's Night. After their introduction into the movie world, the Beatles appeared in several other films before their split. Even after their split up, they continued to inspire creative works long afterward, even if most cinematic tributes to their music can never match the heights of the music itself. In some cases, their high standard of creative quality was reflected in the films they made. But there are a few groan-worthy exceptions to that rule. Let's look at the amazing and worst movies the Beatles ever made, or inspired, starting with the worst to the amazing ones. Number 8. Across the Universe. Inspired by the music of the Beatles, Across the Universe is a musical containing 30-plus Beatles songs. It is a love story about Jude and Lucy. It can also be described as a spellbinding adventure through the counterculture of the late 60s, the Vietnam War, and the popularization of hallucinogenic drugs. This Beatles film is more for teenage girls who would rather watch Moulin Rouge than a real Beatles film. The movie is more concerned with idealizing political events and movements of the 60s rather than creating characters you care about. There's plenty of vibrant visual flair here, but surprisingly little depth beneath it all, despite what a tearful cover of Let It Be sung by a weeping black child amid a riot might have you believe. It's simply unlike any other musical movie you will get to watch. With the help of some of the greatest Beatles tunes, it has long enjoyed a positive reception with the band's fandom. Number 7. Magical Mystery Tour. The Beatles can write a great song, hundreds of them in fact. But that doesn't mean they can make a great movie. This movie is indeed one of the worst Beatles creations. Magical Mystery Tour is a classic movie about drug use. The story doesn't necessarily make the drug use explicit, but its making was fueled by a wicked imagination and heaping doses of LSD. The Fab Four wrote and directed this mostly unscripted, made-for-TV curiosity themselves, and the resulting film feels like a product of a week spent goofing off rather than creating an interesting piece. The major storyline is completely tossed aside and replaced by surreal sequences that don't add up to much. The music interludes and the old 60s aesthetics make it occasionally worthwhile. It was so poorly received that the Beatles all but issued a public apology for this particular work. Number 6. Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. This particular Beatle movie aims at depicting the loosely constructed story of a band as they wrangle with the music industry and battle evil forces bent on stealing their instruments and corrupting their hometown of Heartland. The film is presented in a form similar to that of a rock opera, with the songs providing dialogue to carry the story. Perhaps a jukebox musical of Beatles songs was never a good idea. This 1978 curiosity finds several artists taking up the mantle of the titular band for a truly baffling 111 minutes, most of which consists of barely passable covers of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band and Abbey Road songs. Stars like Peter Hampton and the Bee Gees bring little to their songs and even less to their eye-rolling inducing performances. This would be a horror movie even without being tied to the Beatles' near untouchable legacy. Number 5. Help. Help is a 1965 British musical comedy adventure film directed by Richard Lester, starring the Beatles and featuring Leo McKern, Eleanor Braun, Victor Spinetti, John Bluthal, Roy Kinnear, and Patrick Cargill. Help sees the group struggle to record their new album while trying to protect Starr from a sinister cult and a pair of mad scientists. all of whom are obsessed with obtaining one of his rings. The soundtrack was released as the band's fifth studio album under the same name. The second film to star the Beatles, Help, was released in the summer of 1965 and signaled a shift in the band's creative output. The band was shedding its goofy boy band aesthetic and embracing more aspects of the growing counterculture. The story featured the likes of cults and mad scientists. Its music was a bit more mature than previous movies they had produced. After a while, the soundtrack became iconic. The Beatles had started to opt for their movie game, as Help was filmed with a far more experimental approach. It's not the greatest Beatles film, but it's still worth watching. Number 4. Let It Be. Let It Be is an excruciating viewing experience, but an enlightening one. It captures the band at their nadir when a project intended to reunite them and return them to rock and roll basics became a parade of quiet misery and weary debate. Lots of fans thought Let It Be was the same as Get Back, since it was sourced from the Let It Be footage. Despite coming from the same place, it crafted an entirely different storyline. If Get Back is I Want to Hold Your Hand by Beatlemania, then Let It Be is the brooding and somber Eleanor Rigby. Just as A Hard Day's Night is about the joys of being a Beatle, Let It Be is about the frustrations of being trapped in the biggest band in the world. The film captures the band members so plainly that the film has been officially unavailable for decades. It's slower and not quite as fun as the uneven Help, but the uncomfortable intimacy of the studio scenes and the excitement of the famous rooftop concert make the viewing more interesting. It's the much darker brother of Get Back, filmed with a gritty, colorless bleakness and depicting a band on the verge of total collapse. Subject matter aside, Let It Be is a fascinating and painfully intimate glimpse into the final days as a band. Number 3. Yellow Submarine. Arguably one of the best animated movies ever, Yellow Submarine has been influential on modern filmmaking. Released throughout 1968, the movie is an animated adventure with a stellar soundtrack. The Beatles didn't have much involvement in the making of Yellow Submarine, nor did they voice the cartoon versions of themselves. The story is unfocused, but made up fantastically creative visual sequences and humorous wordplay delivered by impeccable voice actors. The movie aims at entertaining children more. The soundtrack is a solid mix of familiar hits and discoveries, which range from the lousy All Together Now, which sounds like it took no effort to write, to the truly great Hey Bulldog and Only a Northern Song. It helped legitimize animation as a serious art form, and it influenced many future animators, including Pixar co-founder John Lasseter. Its influence continues to reverberate half a century later. Thanks to the Yellow Submarine movie, there might not have been a Toy Story or Beauty and the Beast. This is surely one amazing piece of the Fab Four. Number 2. The Beatles, 8 Days a Week. According to IMDb, this particular movie was rated 7.8. The movie can be categorized with the likes of Let It Be. It is a documentary film by Ron Howard, centering around the Beatles' touring years. The film also features a collaboration between Howard and the surviving Beatles, along with Yoko Ono and Olivia Harrison, representing Lennon and Harrison. It's a peek into an often overlooked Beatles chapter, but it definitely stands with the likes of Let It Be. Number 1. A Hard Day's Night. It was released during the height of Beatlemania. A Hard Day's Night proved that the Beatles were more than just pop stars. It is a genuinely great musical, richly performed by the Fab Four. A Hard Day's Night is a snapshot of the Beatles in their early days, capturing the youthful exuberance their songs represented to the world at large. The story is little more than a day in the life, giving each Beatle except Paul the chance to shine in their hilarious segments. The movie involves them gleefully poking fun at managers, producers, journalists, and anyone else who takes themselves too seriously. John and Ringo are especially delightful as the Groucho Marx and the sad sack of the group, respectively, on top of virtually inventing the cinematic language of the music video. A Hard Day's Night is a joyous experience of laughs and great music, like fun converted into film. The film is influential, not just on future musicals, but on the very concept of music videos. It's easily one of the most important films of the 1960s and of all time. It can also be categorized as one of the amazing masterpieces of the Beatles. That's all for today's video, guys, but before we end, what do you think about the movie ranking? Which of the Beatles movies is your favorite? If you were to rank the Beatles movies from the worst ones to the amazing ones, what would be your rating? Let us know what you think in the comment section below. And if by now you haven't, ensure you subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any new updates about the Beatles.